to Tuvalu, Kiribati are all very much prone to disasters of different kinds, especially disasters that are caused by climate change. There are many disasters that are climate change induced disasters, such as tropical cyclones, uh, flooding that comes with tropical cyclones, and tidal waves, saltwater intrusion, sea level rise. All these things are very much common in this region, in these small island developing states. So from 1970 to 2020, small island developing states lost a considerable amount of money, which accounts for at least 153 billion due to climate change extremes. Climate change extremes, extreme weather events, and this accounts for a huge percentage of their GDP. In total, 13.7 billion was lost by the small island developing states due to the extreme weather conditions that was brought about by climate change. And yeah, as I said earlier on, if you do not know where Fiji is, you will know about it from after my presentation. So we are in the largest ocean, which is the Pacific Ocean, and that means we are surrounded by the sea. We have a what do you call, surrounded by the sea. We have beach. We have coastal areas where people live, where we have villages where people are living close to the sea. So these countries are also threatened because those people who live on the coastal areas near the sea depend on the sea for survival, for their livelihood. They catch fish, crabs, and other organisms from the sea and use it for family consumption and also for sale in the market. So once this climate change brings about disasters, these people's livelihoods are also very much affected because they are dependent on the sea for their survival, for their livelihood. And due to the changes that are happening because of global warming or climate change, the temperatures are rising. And the rise in temperatures leads to many other problems. It affects, leads to ocean acidification, which threatens marine ecosystem. The habitat for marine ecosystems are under risk, at a risk. Coral reefs are at a risk. And fisheries, we sell fish to Japan and Korea, I suppose. Yeah. So because of these kind of events, extreme events that are caused by climate change, the amount of fish that fishermen used to catch before has declined also, and it is going to further decline in the future. Okay, so these are some of the things that climate change is responsible for in the in the small island developing states like Fiji. I will move on to the next one now. Yeah, there is a table here which shows you the climate risk index for the year 2022, and these are the 10 most affected countries by climate change. You will see the top 10 countries. Number 1 is Haiti, followed by Philippines, Pakistan, Madagascar, and Fiji is number 5. So 17 people died due to climate change induced disasters up to 2012 in Fiji, which and it caused damages or loss of up to 135.55 million USD. So that's a huge amount for a small country like Fiji. And 135.55 million is equivalent to 3.18% of the GDP. We lost 3.1% of our GDP due to climate change related disasters that we experienced until 2012, sorry, which is 10 or 12 years back. So I remember there was a very huge flood in 2012, right? And these incidences of flood and other disasters like tropical cyclones are on the rise. Okay, so there are many other, there are 10, these are 10 countries, top 10 countries. You won't see Indonesia there, but Indonesia is also very much vulnerable to climate change because we are similar in nature. Though Fiji and Indonesia have different land mass. Indonesia is, I don't know how many 1,000 or million times larger than Fiji, but we have similar characteristics. We are both made up of group of islands. Fiji, for example, has 350 to 800 islands, while Indonesia has 17,000 to 19,000 islands altogether. So we are both surrounded by the sea, and that means there are people in both Indonesia and Fiji that live on the coast, whose livelihoods, survival is dependent on the sea, fish, crabs, and other items that they get from the marine ecosystem from the sea. Okay, so Indonesia might be in the top 20 or top 30. Okay, moving on further. Yeah, now I'm going to talk about specifically focus on climate change in Fiji. Yeah, can you see the map clearly? Now you can see Fiji there, isn't it?
Yes, doctor, I can see.
Yeah. On the eastern side of Australia. Very small. You see so many red dots all around. They are all small islands like Tonga, Samoa, Cook, French Polynesia, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Nauru. There are so many of them. FSM, Palau, Marshall Islands, all small in nature, all surrounded by the sea. So all are at risk, which are at a greater risk than Fiji. And you'll come to know about it later on in my presentation. So climate change is a major threat for the Pacific Island countries, and Fiji is also very much affected by climate change. It's very much affected, very much prone or vulnerable to climate change. Okay, because of its small nature, because of its isolation, because of its location, because of its makeup. Islands here in Fiji are mostly volcanic islands. Some are atolls even. Okay, so they are not very high. And climate change for us is just like a nuclear weapon. You know, what does a nuclear weapon do? Nuclear weapon wipes out life completely, isn't it? So we see climate change as a nuclear weapon, because if we don't mitigate its impacts, if we don't control, minimize, or don't try to prevent or minimize, slow down climate change, we are going to be completely wiped out in another 50 or 100 or 150 or 200 years because of things that are happening due to climate change. Things like sea level rise and things like saltwater intrusion, things like incidences of tropical cyclones, which have become frequent and more intense, much more stronger than it used to be in the past. All these things are happening. We are experiencing it, and we have to do something to ensure that we survive. So Fiji is one of those countries that is feeling the full brunt of climate change. We are experiencing many changes. Climatic conditions, weather patterns are changing. Right now, I'm sitting in the office and the AC is on 18 degrees, 18, and I still feel hot. And for the past few days, temperature was unbearable. It was so hot. Okay, because of climate change, these things are very visible now, and it is going to become worse in future if we don't take actions. So, though we are very much vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, we don't contribute much towards climate change. That means climate change is mostly a cause of a result of industrialization, mostly. There are many other causes, of course, but industrialization is seen as one of the major causes. And these developed countries are also the ones who are mainly responsible for climate change. Developing countries like Fiji, as you can see, contribute only 0.01%, because we do not have so many factories. We are not an industrialized country like America or Japan or China. We are still very much dependent on agriculture. We do have factories, but those factories are limited. That means emissions from our factories are not as much as emissions from other countries like China, India, USA, or Japan or Germany. And our contribution is 0.01% only. We contribute only 0.0% towards the global emissions of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, but we are feeling the full brunt of climate change. Our contribution is very less, but we are experiencing more and more and stronger and harsh impacts of climate change. And there's a reason for it, right? You must be knowing what is the cause or what is the reason. Because one is that we are very small in nature, isolated, and the other thing is that we do not have the funds or infrastructure to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Okay. Moving on further, if you have any questions in between, you can ask. No need to be shy. Okay, so yeah, I will now just briefly go over the causes of climate change in Fiji. As in other cases, other places, other countries, climate change in Fiji is mostly human-induced. Human beings are majorly responsible for causing climate change.
Bisa saya ulang-ulang.
Tinggal kok ada anjing.
Hello? Somebody is speaking. So causes of climate change in Fiji are the same as in other places. We have emission of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, even from factories, from cars, from vehicles, from abattoirs. We have deforestation. Fiji is exporter of timber to Japan. So we have a lot of our area is under pine plantation. And that pine is harvested on a huge scale. There is huge, large scale logging done in Fiji or every year. And that also leads to climate change and many other disasters. Banning of fossil fuels, the number of cars that we have on our roads have increased. 2 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I did not see so many cars on our roads, but now you will see so many cars on the road everywhere. And those cars use fossil fuels. We have so many trucks, we have so many buses. People prefer to travel by their own car, not realizing that the car is going to produce produce harmful gases like carbon monoxide, which is going to harm the ozone layer. Instead of traveling by the bus, they prefer to travel in their personal private cars, which is a cause of climate change here in Fiji. Okay, and then we have industrial processes. This is not much, but we do have some factories that produce produce gases that affect the ozone layer. We call these poisonous gases, carbon dioxide, maybe, or carbon monoxide. As I said earlier on, they produce methane, which is also contributing to ozone depletion. And then we have agriculture. Sometimes people here to carry out agriculture, to do farming, they clear the forest, cut down the trees. They also use destructive farming techniques and methods, which is not sustainable. And they normally use a lot of fertilizers on their farms, which can also lead to climate change. We normally do sugarcane farming. Sugarcane farming here in Fiji used to be the #1 contributor to GDP a few years back. Now it has been replaced by tourism. Okay, moving on. Any questions? Or you will ask at the end. Okay, up to you.
Di akhir presentasi, Pak, kita buka
Okay.
jawab.
No problem. Causes of climate change. I'm trying to go to the next slide, but I don't know why it's not moving. Okay, here. Look at this picture. What does climate change in Fiji look like? Look at how the pictures here. There are 4 different pictures. There are many more, but these are just examples of what climate change in Fiji looks like. This is the reason why I generally choose to talk on climate change. See the first picture? The houses are underwater, and that is due to flooding. The incidences of flooding have risen over the years owing to climate change. The picture down below is showing the devastation caused by the tropical cyclones, category 5 tropical cyclones. You will notice that the houses are completely damaged. All the roof has been blown away, walls are all missing, only the floor is left. Trees are also branchless and leafless. Next, third one right on top shows you children bathing in water, which is just has just what do you call reached their doorstep. See, due to sea level rise, the water has come in and is moving into their house. So there is a serious problem in many of these coastal villages in Fiji and in the other Pacific Island countries, SIDs, small island developing states. And then the last one here shows you Buni Dongoloa climate change relocation project. Due to the impacts of climate change, many of the coastal villages in Fiji have been relocated, and this is one of them. This village was near the coast. It has been moved to higher ground, as you can see, by the government due to saltwater intrusion. Here, these are some climate change trends that we have observed, experienced over the years in Fiji. The first one here, observed changes in temperature. You notice the maximum and minimum annual and seasonal temperature in Fiji is increasing. And in the short term, between 2020 to 2039, it is predicted to further increase by 0.5 to 0.75 degrees Celsius. And in the long run, up to the year 2100, it is further going to increase by 1.1 to 1.7 degrees Celsius by 2025, and 2 degrees to 3.2 degrees Celsius by 2090. So this is the projection. This is the trend that is going, that is happening right now. We won't be alive to see all that, but it is going to happen. And it can even get even worse than what is mentioned here. Look at rainfall. Rainfall does not show much significant variation. But in the short run, it's very difficult to see the changes in the rainfall patterns. In the long run, how about the long run? In the long run, rainfall is going to be inconsistent. Some areas, sometimes the dry season, for example, will have very less rainfall, and the wet season will have more rainfall. That is the trend. That is according to the trend that we are experiencing now. Dry season will have no rainfall, no rainfall at all, whereas the wet season will have excessive rainfall. So there will be extremes, extreme. And the sea level rise in Fiji is worst in comparison with the world average. Sea level rise in Fiji is double the global average. And in the short term projection, it is further going to increase by from between 3 to 16 centimeters by 2030. Just imagine 16 centimeters. And in the long run, it will be even worse than that, 21 to 62 centimeters by 2090. 62 centimeters. Just imagine what will happen to those coastal areas and coastal villages and low-lying areas. Tropical cyclones, extreme events like tropical cyclones are going to become more intense and frequent in the short run. In the long run, there will be lesser cyclones, but they will be more intense, more strong than they used to be in the past. Okay, so these are some of the climate change trends that we have been experiencing over the years, and it is going to worsen in the future. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. These are the communities or people at most risk. You can see the picture there. A villager is standing in the sea, and his house is just few meters behind. So just imagine, the previous slide said sea level is going to rise by 62 centimeters. what will happen to that house? The salt water that he's standing in right now will be in his house, on his doorstep. Fiji has many volcanic islands, and 12% of the urban and 6% of the rural population lives in the coastal low-lying areas. 12% of the urban population and 6% of the rural population in Fiji lives on coastal areas. Why? Because they are dependent on the sea for their livelihoods, for survival. And these households are going to be at a greater risk because they will be affected by storm surges, cyclone impacts, and flash floods, and permanent inundation due to sea level rise. This is all going to affect them. People who are living in coastal communities or low-lying areas, as you can see in the picture. Okay, and this is the sea level rise scenario in Fiji. See, sea level rise in Fiji, sea level has in Fiji has risen by 6 millimeters per year since 1993, and this rise is larger than the global average of 2.8 to 3.6 millimeters per year. So you can see that the sea level rise in Fiji is much more stronger or larger than the global sea level rise. We have been experiencing 6 millimeters of sea level rise in Fiji since 1993. Just try to calculate 6 millimeters by from 1993 to 2003. How many years? 10 years. 2003 to 2023, another 10 years, 20 years. 20 years by 6 millimeters. How many millimeters or meters will that be? The sea level rise, the sea level in Fiji has risen by those many millimeters or meters in the last 20 years. See, look at that. In 2030, 7 to 17 centimeters. Very low emission scenario. In 2050, it will almost double, 7 to 29. And it will keep on increasing as we progress, 2070 and 2090. Low emission scenario, 7 to 17 centimeter, 14 in 2050, 14 to 30, and so on. Medium emission scenario, 7 to 16, and then 13 to 29 by 2050, and by 2070, 20 to 46 centimeters. A very very high emission scenario is even worse. 8 to 7 centimeters by 2030, and 16 to 33 centimeters by 2050, and so on. For 2070 and 2090, it is going to increase. It will not come down. Here, as I mentioned earlier on, due to sea level rise caused by climate change, we have many coastal villages that are at the risk of sinking, or that have experienced coastal flooding, or that have salt water intrusion cases. So because of that, there are many villages, 42, the government identified 42 or even more than that, villages that need to be relocated, that need to be moved from the coastal areas to a safer, higher ground. And this village, Nabukandra, is one of the 42 villages that was identified by the government for relocation. Can you see that village here? Here, this Vitilevu is the main island in Fiji. So there is this village, Nabukandra. It's right on the coastal area that has been identified the government to be moved to higher ground for safety. And there's another one, Tonguru village here. Right, the first map, the first picture on right on top. Tonguru village is also on the coast, and it has already started relocating since the last 50 years. And Tonguru village moved 100 meters inland during the 1970s because salt water started to come inland. And Gunidongolova village, the picture, the map in the middle here. This village is on the other second largest island in Fiji, known as Vanuatu. So this village, Gunidongolova, here is the old site on the coast. It has moved to this location here. Can you see that? From here to here. Why? Because of saltwater inundation. Salt water was coming inland. So the government moved them to a higher safe place. here, there will be an increase in the frequency and intensity of the cyclones, Fiji within the South Pacific region in the tropical zone, and tropical zones are mostly affected by cyclones. We have been experiencing tropical cyclones for the last 40 years, as far as I know. Almost every year we do have cyclones, tropical cyclones, category 1, category 2, sometimes category 3. But for the last 5 or 10 years, we are we have experienced tropical cyclones of category 5 tropical cyclones. That is the strongest. Like, for example, in 2016, we had a category 5 tropical cyclone named Winston. Cyclone Winston, which caused so many damages to infrastructure, to buildings, communication, schools, bridges, for example. And you can see some of it in the diagram there. Some of the trees were leafless. All the leaves had gone because the wind was so strong. And there was another very strong category 5 cyclone in 2020, December 2020. The name was Tropical Cyclone Yasa. So these cyclones, category 5 cyclones, were very rare in the past. But we are now experiencing cyclones of which are of category 5, strongest cyclones, because of climate change. Climate change is causing all these changes. We are experiencing frequent and intense cyclones that cause havoc, devastation to livelihoods, agricultural productivity, and casualties in many cases. At least 40 people had also died during the tropical cyclone Winston in 2016. So this is another scenario which shows you the changes in the average surface temperature. There's a table and there's a graph. Look at the graph, the generalization that you can make from the graph. In geography, we normally look at graphs or pictures and make generalizations. But the generalization that you can make from the table or from the graph is that temperatures in Fiji have risen, are increasing, generally increasing from 1980 to 2023. That is a general trend. And that is all caused or can be attributed to climate change, perubahan iklim. Okay. So moving on further, climate change also leads to poverty and inequality. How? How does climate change cause poverty and lead to inequality? Due to the impacts of climate change, our population is exposed, more vulnerable to disasters. Natural disasters like floods. Floods are very common. We have this every year. And then we also have other disasters like tidal waves. And we also have disasters such as tropical cyclones, category 5, as I said earlier on. And then between 2007 and 2015, there was some unplanned projects and in the coastal areas, and these were also damaged by hazards like tidal waves, saltwater intrusion. Fiji's poverty rate is 28%, which is quite high, looking at our population. And climate-related disasters have caused problems like malnutrition, undernutrition, and that accounted for 4.5% between 2007 and 2017 in the 10 years gap period. And yeah, cyclones have caused damage to infrastructure, loss of livelihood, loss of lives, damage to agricultural farmland, reduction in agricultural output, and then 44 people died, 30,000 homes were destroyed, and 62% of Fiji's population was affected by the tropical cyclone Winston in 2016. Okay, and it is further projected that 4% of our population is going to go into poverty every year if we continuously have climate-induced disasters such as tropical cyclones or floods or sea level rise or saltwater intrusion. Yeah, this is how the different hazards have pushed people into poverty over the years. 2017 to 2100, you will see generally the trend is increasing. Tropical cyclones, 7,300 people, 0.9% of the population in 2017 was in poverty due to tropical cyclone. 2050, it will be the same. 2100, it will also be the same. And by 2000, in the 10-year event, it is going to rise drastically. Okay, same thing with fluvial floods and fluvial floods. So, average number of people falling into poverty every year, you can see that people falling into poverty for the 100-year event is going to rise drastically. Yeah, that is generally what the table is showing, how people are going to uh, go into poverty due to disasters that result from climate change. Okay, then health. Health impacts of climate change. How will climate change affect or impacts on our health? Climate change, the change in the climate is going to bring about an increase in temperature, which is uh, linked to cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks, hypertension, and this is what we are already experiencing now. Over the years, we have seen an increase in the temperature, and so have we seen. We also have seen increase in the uh, in deaths resulting from heart attacks. So we are going to experience this. We have already started experiencing this, and these cases are going to rise in the future, owing all due to climate change. Okay, and a prolonged period of excessive heat can threaten human health. Even animals will be at risk. Plants will also dry and die out, leading to agricultural production decline. Okay, agricultural production will decline, and that means the supply will be less and the demand will be high, leading to inflation. Okay, and air quality will also decline. Soil is also going to be affected, and so will water supply will become scarce. Freshwater supplies will either be contaminated by saltwater intrusion or become limited, scarce. Okay, heat stress will lead or cause problems like heat rash, cramps, dehydration, exhaustion, stroke, and even death. Okay, and the elderly people, children, and those who are already sick with who have pre-existing conditions like hypertension and diabetes are going to be the greatest, or going to be at the greatest risk. And these things are already visible now. As I said earlier on, I can personally confirm that these things are happening already, because I've seen an increase in the number of deaths caused by heart attack here over the last five years, yeah, which was not common in the past. Okay, and then we have communicable diseases. Okay, like dengue fever. There was a flood in 2012, and this led to many cases of dengue fever. Also had many cases of typhoid fever following the flood in 2012. People in the Western Division, where I am right now, this area was affected by flood, and this area was also, so the people here were also affected by dengue fever and typhoid fever. Okay, and there is going to be an increase in diarrhea cases for every 1 degree increase in temperature. So as temperature increases, so will the cases of diarrhea. Okay, And leptospirosis, yeah. Leptospirosis, there have been 200 to 100 cases of leptospirosis over the past 50 years in Fiji. Yeah? And this leptospirosis is mostly related to uh, extremes extremes of temperature and high rainfall. These are the conditions that this leptospirosis thrives in. 40 minutes, I have 5 more minutes. So tourism is also going to be affected. Tourism is now the number one foreign exchange earner for Fiji. How will tourism be affected? Due to sea level rise, uh, the the areas, the beaches that were previously exposed or used for tourism are going to be underwater. That means there will be a reduction in the number of beaches. So the tourism number might also decline due to that. Many of the tourism infrastructure will be damaged by climate change induced disasters like cyclones, floods, thereby leading to a decline in tourist arrivals, coastal degradation, shortage of water, and health issues will all affect the tourism industry. Moving on further, here, agriculture and fisheries, there will be a decline in agricultural production. How? Because of extreme climatic conditions. Sometimes in the dry season, it will be extremely dry, and wet season will be extremely wet. So those plants that need moderate climatic conditions to survive will not be able to survive, thereby leading to a decline in agricultural production, which will further contribute to a decline in GDP, decline in people's income. And that is going to lead to many other problems like stress, mental stress, and even deaths in some cases. Fisheries will also decline because there will be negative impact on the coral reef from the sediment that washes into the sea and will affect the coral reefs, pollute the coral reefs, pollute the marine ecosystem. Okay, and then the food chain, the link that the survival of the marine organisms will also be affected because one organism is dependent on the other. Okay, these are some of the possible solutions. Relocation is one. Relocation is already happening. A number of villages, at least 5 that I know, have been relocated, and there are many more that are going to be relocated very soon to prevent the to, uh, to bring them to safety so that their village, the livelihoods are not affected, their village is safe. And enhance infrastructure such as building sea walls maybe, but this is going to be very expensive. And maybe yeah, sea walls, building sea walls and banks, river banks, or sea banks, sorry, sea walls mostly. Sustainable coastal management like mangrove planting and coral reef protection. This is also happening in some of the coastal areas in Fiji, where the mangrove seedlings are planted so that they act as a barrier. They prevent the huge waves from coming, prevent the seawater from coming inland. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions, use renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, hydroelectric power, and promote efficient use of fuel and transport. Here we also are focusing on nature-based solutions now, which deals with mangrove restoration to protect coastlines, okay, from erosion and storm surges, coral reef preservation to protect the biodiversity and protect against flooding, sustainable land and water management. These are all happening. These things are all in practice now, but they need to speed up. They need to, yeah, there need to be more of these. Just a new term which has come into play now. It needs to be implemented in all areas which are vulnerable to climate change, impacts of climate change. Sorry. Here, community engagement and education. These are some local solutions. Involve the local people in climate action or planning. It's very important that we involve the local people, the villagers who are affected, so that they are able to give you the right information and you can carry out the planning the right way. Education campaigns, there should be awareness campaigns or make people aware of what climate change is, and how to minimize the impacts and how to protect yourself from climate change, from sea level rise. These things need to be done in the local language so that people are really able to understand, because these things are all happening here, but it's not that effective in most cases, because we do these awareness campaigns in English, which is not understood by many people who live in the isolated islands who do not know English. Great. Youths should also be actively involved in this. There should be study programs at university. Okay, like at my university here, we have postgraduate diploma and masters in climate change, which empowers the people to later on work towards climate change adaptation and mitigation. And it's very important also to integrate traditional knowledge into climate adaptation and mitigation strategies. Traditional knowledge is very important. It should not be overlooked. It should be integrated with the modern knowledge so that the best solution is sought for the to minimize the impacts of climate change. Yeah, these are some recommendations. It's 45. I have taken 45 minutes, 30 seconds. Few more minutes, or should I end? We have to practice water management at home, manage water wisely, carry out gardening in the community. Okay, ensure that we have the warning system in place so that vulnerable communities and remote locations are well informed in advance, and so that they are able to make the right preparations in preparation for the disaster. Promote community-based approaches and nature-based solutions. Okay. Then we should conserve the wetland conservation and mangrove protection is very important, because livelihoods are dependent on mangrove swamps, mangrove forest, mangrove ecosystem. And okay, the existing programs that we have in place should also be protected, or that should be built upon. The program that we have to improve on that so that we are able to bring about a change in climate change adaptation and mitigation efforts that we have been practicing over the past. So, in short, that is all that I have for today. I have taken 47 minutes exactly, 2 minutes more than I was allowed to. So that is all that I have for you today. If you have any questions, you are most welcome. You can ask, and I will try my best to answer your queries. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih Mr. Rohit. Next, Mrs. Oya, please.
Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, okay. This agenda is Q&A. If there are any questions, all participants, welcome. Raise hand or write in chat your question. If you cannot raise hand, just open your mic. Okay. Nelda Serena.
Okay, Nelda Serena, come on. Okay, thank you. Is my voice everyone can hear?
Yeah, it is clear.
Mr. Rohit, I wanna ask about there is a local community in Fiji, right?
Yes.
Then what part of in what way are local communities in Fiji being engaged in climate adaptation decision making. I see that the local community just educate how for decision making, how they engage in that. Thank you.
So, should I
Okay.
answer just now or should
Yeah,
I wait for
can
the
never
other?
mind if you want to answer now, Mr. Rohit.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. That is a very relevant and good question, because that is something which is lacking. As far as I know, or you also must be knowing of cases in your own country, that local community is normally not taken into consideration when decision making or policy making is done. And that is the same sad story here also. In most cases, the local community here is not engaged or is not consulted in decision making or in policy making. So the government officials sit in the office and they make policies and rules and regulations by themselves without consulting the people who are affected. So I don't think, as far as I know, they don't have an active role. They are not consulted or taken into consideration when policy making or decision making is done. So they are just left aside. That is the sad thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rohit. And the next, I think there are 2 question again is Zenia. Yeah,
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's very interesting that climate change can directly affect the small island country like Fiji. That I have some question from
Yeah.
Your explanation. The first question is the relocated citizens or community, if they relocated due to the cyclone or the floods, and then what about the natural resources and the livelihood or the jobs of the community? And the second, how does the government make the community willing to be relocated? I think that's the hard effort to make people, to make community to be relocated. Okay, maybe that's the first and the second question. I think I have 3 questions. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God.
You can go on.
So
Okay.
No problem.
And the third, I think the material is very interesting for our fellow students. So, with the climate change issue, how can we contribute the real action, small step maybe, that we can take to overcome this climate change phenomenon? And I hope this question can encourage our students to be inspired to take action to save the environment. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rohit.
Yeah. Thank you. I would like to answer this question that you asked. There are 3. The first one, when the people are relocated from the original village place of residence, they are moved to a new place. What about their livelihood and the jobs? Yes.
And also, how is the natural resource to support their everyday life daily need?
Thank you. Yeah, like previously when they were living near the coast, they depended on the sea for survival, isn't it? For fish, and their livelihood was dependent on the marine resources. But now they have been moved to another place, new place. There, they don't have the sea close by. So how are they going to survive? The government provides them with a new piece of land where they are expected to do farming, like farming such as dalo farming, taro, uh, dalo, cassava.
Yes.
So instead of catching and selling fish, they have to shift to uh, farming like cassava, dalo, yangona even. They do this farming and then sell the produce in the market for their livelihood, for their survival. And then
Okay.
that is first part. The second part is how did the government convince the people to relocate?
Yes.
Yeah, that is something that the government has been doing, but that is one of the limitations. There are many coastal villages in Fiji that are at the brink, at the risk of uh, sinking due to sea level rise, but they don't want to relocate because of many reasons. Because they have been living there for hundreds of years, their ancestors were buried there, they have emotional attachment to the land and all that. So it's a very difficult job for the government to convince them. But I think the government promises to provide them with new houses and new schools for their children, and in some cases probably land for farming, and that is in some way an incentive for these people to move. And the government also holds workshops and awareness programs, campaigns which is aimed which uh, advises people, which tells people about the impacts, the what do you call the consequences if they don't move. If they don't move from there, if they continue insist to live there, in a few years' time, the land will be underwater, their houses will be underwater, and they will be in absolute poverty. So, uh, awareness and awareness programs and the incentive, the different types of incentive that the government provides, like new houses, land for farming,
Yes.
people in a way, some villages are convinced to relocate, to leave their old place of residence and move to a new one. But there are some who do not wish to relocate, no matter how hard the government tries. So it's a very difficult task. So yeah.
Okay. So
And the third,
the government,
yeah,
the government very well prepared before they relocate the community.
yeah,
They provide with the infrastructure and also
yeah,
education and also
yes,
the
houses,
incentive, so everyone would happily move maybe.
yeah, not
Okay. Yes.
they
Okay.
don't have any other choice. And the third question that you asked, student, how can we as a student contribute towards climate
Yeah.
change action?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
important question to inspire
to
our students
that's very
to
true.
make an action.
And
Yes.
that's a very good question. In fact, my dissertation was related to your question. The students' action towards climate change adaptation and mitigation. So, as students, we or you have to, like you mentioned, in small steps, step by step, we have to engage in activities such as maybe tree planting that is organized by the different. I'm sure that you have student organizations at your university, yeah? Like HMJ Geography or some other environmental group or club in your university. And that club normally does carries out activities like uh, beach cleanup maybe, or tree planting, or pengabdian masyarakat, community, what do you call, community service, where you go out into the community and educate the people about what climate change is and how is it going to affect them and what are they supposed to do to minimize the impacts. We as students, you as students should also take part in tree planting campaigns organized by the different organizations or student organizations, and educate your parents, educate the people around you about what climate change is, why is it happening, and what are the impacts, so that they are aware, and also inform them, tell them their role. How are they going to bring about a change or minimize the impacts of climate change? And you can also engage in research, okay, research on climate change in your community and get that published, because that publication is going to to reach a greater audience, so that people know that this is what climate change is, and this is what is happening, and this is what we can do to minimize its effect. And there are a range of activities. You can take part in marches and protests if it's allowed, if it is legal. Many more. Take part in essay writing competitions, debates, and poster competition to bring about awareness on climate change. Okay. Thank you. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Rahid.
Mr. Rohit, thank you so much. Is there any question again? There is no? Mr. Rohit, I want to ask about the relocation project that appear of the slide. It's just a prototype or has been developed in certain place.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you clearly.
I have see in your slide there are relocation project, and I just want to know, is it a prototype or is have been developed in certain place?
Relocation. Yeah.
Relocation project in your slide.
Yeah.
Is it a prototype or it have been developed in certain place?
It has been developed by the government by looking at a number of things, like with the construction of houses. They also make sure that the house that they are going to construct is cyclone resistant. So based on the requirements of the health department, health ministry, then the government designs the help of the health department, sorry, the health ministry, Ministry of Health, the health department of the Ministry of Health, they, in consultation with the government, then they come up with a design of the relocated village. The houses should be cyclone resistant and category 5 cyclone resistant, and there are many other specifications that they have to follow. So yeah, it's just in the preliminary stages. So you can say that it's a first wave, is a preliminary version, and it is to some extent a prototype. Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rohit. Okay, today is enough for the material from Mr. Rohit. I want to conclude this material. The material is about the climate change. It's the change of the pattern and intensity of climate element over a very long period of time. Therefore, of change related to change in weather habit or change in the distribution of weather event, and main cause of climate change is global warming. And the activity for the human can also change the other climate and has a currently driving climate change due to global warming. Thank you, Mr. Rohit. Thank you so much. The next agenda is giving take of the appreciation from the coordinator study program, biology study program, for Mrs. Masita, Dr. Masita MPD. Welcome to give the appreciation for Mr. Rohit.
Okay, thank you, Miss Rukoya. Mr. Rohit, this is the certificate for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your sharing knowledge. I hope all my students gain meaningful knowledge. And I hope we can continue to work together in prioritizing environment conservation. Thank you, Mr. Rohit.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Mrs. Masita. Oh, I'm a master of ceremony. I wanna sing. I wanna thank you so much for keynote speaker for today, and all participants have been joined in webinar. And I wanna say thank you and see you in the next webinar. Good afternoon and say Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Good night. It's 7:20
Good
p.m.
night.
here.
In your city,
Yeah,
now is
7:20 p.m.
Okay. Good night, Rohit. I'll contact you
Right.
again. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
all.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Welcome. Terima kasih.
Sampai jumpa.
Sampai jumpa.
Sampai jumpa.
Ah.